The one thing I wanted to jump to next, and sorry, my open head and ajna is kicking up right now. So, oh yes, aha, notes. Notes are priceless. So, so you've also been specifically chosen today to be on the panel because I have two camps here of splenic projectors. I have one camp who have defined will and one camp who have undefined will. And I think those are very important distinctions. And so this is something that I would love to dig into a little bit more deeply. So, Tammy, I'm actually going to start with you. You are in the splenic projector with defined will camp. And next I'm going to go to Brigitte, who also has defined will. And then I have Kai and Shannon, who are in the undefined will camp. And I'd like to see, what kind of contrasts potentially come up, and what kind of takeaways people, especially projectors with splenic authority who are in either camp kind of understand some potential subtleties that may or may not be there. So Tammy, do you want to start?
Sure. I have to say, I have two centers defined. I have the spleen and the will. I have one channeled, the 4426. The will for me has been one of the hardest things to decondition because it's really like there's such a new awareness as to what the will center is. Mine's defined through the gate 26 of, integrity or the sacred trickster. And really, the way that the will center operates is in a push, push, glide, give, receive, work, rest. And this has been really, really interesting learning. When can I push? When can I push through? And when should I rest? And so for me, this has been, lots and lots of trial and error of really understanding how to use my will efficiently, effectively, with integrity, and without, getting into my head about it so much. And so how can I feel if my will, center is burnt out? Right? Like, what are the subtle clues that my will center is burnt out? And I believe Brigitte said something about, well, the universe just isn't going to send you stuff. And there's a truth to that for sure. And yet I was talking to Michelle yesterday, and when I got the invitation to speak at the conference, I was at my lowest low at that time. I just worked 3 12-hour shifts at the hospital. I work in mental health, and I was at my lowest low. The way that we create is through our baseline frequency, right? So we're going to experience high highs. We're going to experience low lows. We're learning not to make decisions when we're on either high or either low, regardless of your strategy, right? Regardless of their strategy, it really is energy. And so for me, there's so much trust, even with that will center, so much trust in myself and in the universe that I'm going to be supported, right? Because we are all supported. And so really, there's such a huge level of self-trust and sovereignty for choice with that will center defined, I find. I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I definitely hope that helps others, other splenic projectors with defined will or somebody that knows them. And just as a little aside, for those who are still new to human design, the will center is also called the heart center, or I'm blanking here. Ego. The ego center. That's another way that it is known in human design. So I just want to give context. I personally prefer calling it the will center because it is truly the center of willpower and self-worth. To me, words matter. Heart center, especially for newbies. I'm not worried about people who understand human design quite well, but for newbies, heart center might be a little confused with just your heart, right? Like in feelings and emotions. That's, there's different parts for that. And and ego also can have different interpretations. So that's my preference in using the will center. Tammy, I'll jump in, and then there's a question for Brigitte. I'll go to Brigitte. Yeah, go ahead, Tammy.
I just wanted to say real quick, I'm glad that you brought the ego up because we're talking about a little bit about limitations today and fear and what's holding us back. And a lot of the times with the will center, ego defined, really stepping back and like having a conversation with thy will versus my will. And that's kind of how I've been working with the will center. Is this thy will or my will? Because my will's always going to be limited. My will's always going to be safe. My will is going to be in my safety zone, where thy will is going to expand me. It's going to, scare me a little bit, but it's going to help me step more into my potential than if I just play in my will.
Thank you for that. Brigitte, I want to answer your question before going to you and talk about your experience with your will center. So you asked me, why did you choose the will as being a defining characteristic in the panel versus the root or throat or G center? So really great question. It really started actually based on a non-projector experience, based on experience of the manifester, who's talked about the experience as far as being a splenic manifester, and oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes the splenic manifester might have that definition in their will center, right? The same, the 4426, the channel from the spleen directly to the will. Now, the difference as a manifester is they have a motor to the throat, directly or indirectly, and from that manifester's perspective, and other manifestors will agree that there's a difference in the subtlety of their intuition, right? Their spleen still talks to them, but it's almost like the will center needs to be on board energetically for that spleen to be like, this is a yes or this is a no, right? And so that is why I decided to direct. And when I invited Tammy and you, my best buds, right? I realized you both have defined will. So I also wanted to offer a perspective to the people tuning in of undefined will as a flip side. So does that answer your question? Yeah. And on that note, why don't you jump out and we'll talk about you and your experience, because you have defined will as well in your design. And then I'm going to jump to Kai and Shannon with undefined will to just see if there are any contrasts or any experiences along that nature.
Thank you for that explanation. That was great. Could you do me a favor, though? Could you say the question again that you'd like me to answer?
Yes. Okay. Well, let me ask it again or rephrase it maybe. So your experience having a defined will.
Uh-huh.
I know that's not your only motor. You also have your root. You have actually a fair amount of definition in your chart. You have 3 centers undefined. So you have, as a motor, you have the root and you have the will defined. How do you feel your will feeds, or do you feel like there's any bridge with your splenic authority potentially?
Again, it came online quite suddenly, really, to be able to see that bridge, right? So I have always had trouble understanding the 4426. When I learned about that channel, it was presented as the car salesman channel, kind of a little, and in my mind, nobody said this, right? Like a little snake oil person, a little smarmy, a little, manipulative and all that stuff. And again, I was like, okay, don't relate to that. I'll just put that there. Never paid attention to it. But around 2020, 2021, I started to get these real, I don't know what's going on over there, but it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right, and it's really bothering me, and I will proceed to speak about it for 3 years because it's really irritating me. And it generally was about watching people who didn't know anything about anything suddenly become experts and making money from it. And it killed me inside because I thought the poor people who are being taken advantage of. Right. So I wasn't being the smarmy salesperson. I was the one sniffing it out. Right. And recognizing how that's not right and feeling this real wanting to do something about it, but not being able to do anything about it, but talk through it. And I don't know, I might still be working on it because the letting go of it is not easy. Recently, I let go of one and then found another one that I'm like annoyed about, right? So I think that line definitely is, or the flow for me is, the other thing we talk about is, lessons from the past, things that have served us up until now. What doesn't serve us? What does still serve us? What should we keep? What should we let go? What should we promote as, let's revamp this and keep it? Like, I feel like that's how my spleen and my will center works. When I follow my strategy, though, that flow of my design comes online as well. So it's like, okay, I can see this, I'm going to work with this and I'm going to put it out there. And I have the energy to do that. And then, my will center that has been very burnt out for years, will wake up and give me what I need. And especially if I'm connected at my sacral with someone that can, share their sacral energy with me, it's like there's such joy in working that process. My will center is just in heaven because I know the will center is very much about self-worth and value for ourselves, others, things, material things, all that stuff. And I don't think I've ever had a problem with self-worth. Reflecting on it, going, I know I got stuff to offer. I know I'm valuable. I know, right? It's other people that don't know. And what would trip me up is in my spleen, I did have gates where I would be self-critical. I know I can do this, but I don't know if it's perfect enough. And, the two of them would argue back and forth about it. And, oh my God, what if they ask me a question and I don't know the answer? I'm going to die. And part of my incarnation cross is hypersensitivity, right? You just want to belong to a group. I wouldn't say, I want you to love me. It wasn't that. Is that you just want to be a part of the team and you're so critical that you can't imagine they won't do the same to you. Right. So it's been like this really cool watching the energies flow between the two. So I don't know if that's answering your question, but I'm sharing sort of my own experience with it. And that's all I can do as a storyteller is share. And hopefully people can grab a morsel or two that they relate to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it. Nice. Kai.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
So,
hello.
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you. Do you want me to frame the question? So I'll do it for the audience, for anybody who's tuning in. So Kai, you are a projector with undefined will center. The will center is also the heart or the ego center, different names it's known by in human design. And so we were just talking a moment ago for, projectors with splenic authority and defined will. And you are a projector with splenic authority and an undefined will. So you have the root center, the spleen. So you have a spleen to root connection, and then throat to ajna. That's your other channel and your other centers. Can you speak at all to maybe the experience of undefined will? Is that something you've explored?
Yes, I have. Maybe to start with, the undefined will center. Well, when I was younger, of course, I was not aware of it, but which additionally made it difficult for me, only realizing it later, of course, that I had, till end of my school time, I had many talents, and I was good in many things, but I did not really know what I want to do. Like this continued for my life till the 30s. Like I always knew what I don't want. I had examples what I don't want, but really not sure what I want. And growing up in a very loving, but also bit demanding environment, I realized later with the human design that I took many expectations from the outside to fulfill, and that I needed to prove, to be loved, to be appreciated, to be heard. And I was really running after it for many, 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 many years. And also burning out again and again on this path. Until, in the end, the universe saved me with a serious health issue in the end that made me realize, okay, I have to do something else. I cannot continue like this. And with the open will, I could, also the open crown center, I was taking a lot of inspirations from the outside. So I could get enthusiastic about things, but then realizing shortly after, maybe it's not 100% it. And with the talents, it also took me quite some time to understand that only because I'm good in something, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's my passion also. And to find out my passions, it's really it's an ongoing process. I found my way now more and more, but I really had to go for many, many years on a path where I felt like, I have the success, I get forward, but it is not really mine. Like it's, and only stepping back from that and realizing, okay, what do I really want? Was it tricky, or is an ongoing tricky process?
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. And also, part of your story talking about healing from, health issues, and that must have been a journey, because we can't control, I guess, every aspect of our health, right? There are just so many things as part of it, but I can also see the impact of how, when we operate out of alignment, and especially if we don't know what alignment even looks like, is the impact on our bodies and our health.
Exactly. It's a miracle, and it's a mystery how everything works together. And I do believe by now I know, like, everything that I experience in life, every situation that I'm facing, every condition that I have, it's telling me something. And for many, many years, I couldn't see the signs. I just simply didn't see it. I had other things in my mind that I thought that I need to do, or that's the way I need to go. But universe is always bringing us back and giving us the situations that we can learn from. And when we get for a moment silent and listen and have the courage to do things differently, then magical things can happen.
Absolutely. Thank you. Shannon, do you want to speak about your experience with regards to, you are a splenic projector with undefined will, and you have two centers defined. You have your spleen and your root, and then you're open or undefined in the rest.
I have one gate defined in my will center, which is the gate 26, which I actually considered a gift, because it, gate 26 is believing in the abundance, believing in, the magic of abundance and a good outcome for everyone. So I appreciate that particular gate has given me, a happy outlook on that regard. However, from my perspective, I came from a pretty dysfunctional family, and having an open will center meant that I did not have a defined definition of my own value. And I loved what Brigitte said about, she knows her value. She knows who she is. She may have self-doubts about it, or she may be arguing with herself whether anybody else recognizes it. But there's a core understanding of self-worth and value when you have a defined will center. I don't have a defined will center. First of all, I don't have any willpower, period. And when I try and have willpower, I have it for a very short period of time, or I just fry my circuits. But what I've come to understand is, with an undefined willpower, how it manifests for me is I spent a good part of my life trying to prove my worth in the world and being a people pleaser, always saying yes when my spleen was definitely a hard no, doing things for others and not doing for myself, because if I could prove to others that I had worth, then maybe somehow I could internalize that and see myself as valuable. And so I've recognized that's a life journey for me. I think that's one of my soul's curriculum, was to come into this lifetime and really master the art of accepting one's value and owning one's value. And it's a constant question all the time. And so having an open will center for me is always an invitation to notice where I'm stopping myself because I believe that I'm not worthy, quote unquote. The other side of that, having an open will center, is it's given me a tremendous gift in the work that I do, in helping people rewrite their personal narrative, to help them rewrite their own story and to recognize the limiting beliefs that they hold. Is my spleen and my intuition is like a laser focus, and I can feel it before they even speak. So from a coaching perspective and from a business perspective, it's given me a wonderful key to help unlock other people's stories, because I recognize it. I know what it feels like. So obviously a lot of my clients, and I don't know, remember what the statistics are, but there's an awful lot of people out there that don't have defined will. And we live in a culture, the Nike culture, just do it. And so we live in the overculture, which teaches us that we should be having willpower, when in fact we actually don't. So it's beautiful that you use this contrast in this panel today, because I think it is important for people to understand whether they do or don't have consistent access to that energy, to that understanding, and also to recognize when they're not necessarily feeling their value. That's an invitation to go, oh, that's part of my design, and there's something there for me. There's always a gift as well as the grapple. So that's how it shows up for me.
I love that expression, the gift and the grapple.
Yeah, it wasn't really mine. I have to credit Robin Wynn for that, because she really uses that in her book. So I don't want to take ownership of that, but she beautifully stated. And we have to remember, right? There is a conundrum, but there's always a gift.
I believe that wholeheartedly. I call reflectors, because they are only 1% of the population, I call them magical unicorns. But the truth is, we are all magical unicorns, right? In human form, because we all have unique gifts and talents. Like, that's always been one of my core beliefs, and the core thing I stand on, even in my business, is that, and helping people get in touch with that. And you are correct. I think that I have had moments. I have a defined will as well. And just like Brigitte said, like, I just fundamentally, I know I have value, and I'm valuable, and I have gifts to share with the world. Of course, there are moments you're like, do I? But that's just, once again, monkey mind, yakka, right? Fundamentally, I know and I believe it. But I think that the will center is extremely and willpower is extremely misunderstood. And, and to know from a human design perspective, it's a work to rest kind of center, as Tammy was saying, right? It's here to use and then, turn on. It's like, I'll call it like a generator, not generator as in human design type, but like a physical generator, right? Imagine when the power goes out, you flip on a generator. That's, sort of more the role of the will center. Like, you turn it on when you need it, but you turn it off and you just give it a rest, when you don't, and like when the electrical grid's doing its job. So that's almost kind of more the willpower and that will center, and that and deeper with that, the value and the self-worth. So you're right on all counts. There's a lot of there's magic in the defined centers, and there's absolutely brilliant wisdom in the undefined centers when you can learn to let go of the conditioning, just as you said. So thank you. we're going to wrap it up shortly. So what I'm just going to go around and do is ask everybody if they have any last comments or shares. Brigitte, you had a couple of things here you wanted to just mention. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I was just things that came up and I thought, oh, let me clarify some things that I said and just an observation, So just to continue from what you were saying and what Shannon was saying about, the gifts of defined and open will center. And when you have a defined will center, you do tend to take for granted the gifts that are there, right? You just are, oh, I have this. I feel really good about myself. How come they don't? And I personally have never asked that question, but I know people who have defined will centers and they don't realize they walk around with full understanding and full, like it's in there, right? They are that thing. And they ask that question a lot, like in the emotional center. Well, I'm okay. Why aren't you okay? Or I know what I'm doing with the identity center. Why don't you know what you're doing? Right? Like there is that vibe. And I just wanted to share that put that out there for people who are learning human design as well. That's where not taking it personal, having patience, compassion for each other. We're different. And just because you can do a thing doesn't mean it comes natural to the other person. And we have this energy sharing project that we do, right? And so that we can experience all of it. So that's my first thing I wanted to say. And the second thing is I have used the expression, I believe, a few times, things coming online. And I thought maybe that might be misunderstood or not clear for some people. So what I mean is, for years, because I had put a lot of pressure on my will center, I used it as my energy source because it's pretty, my root and my will center, that's all I have. And thinking I was a generator, I was pulling energy from the will center. And that's where over time it became incredibly fried. I did not do work to rest. I did not do the down, the off, on of the will center very well. So over time, I had to learn to relax, right? My strategy is what helped me relax. It was, am I recognized? Am I invited? No? Okay, not doing it. That is what protected my will center and allowed it to get stronger, right? So I guess it would be, am I recognized? Am I invited? And is my spleen on board? Yes or no, right? That would be the process. So I think I spent decades deconditioning all of the chart by just following those things, right? So as space opened up in my brain and my body could take it on more or whatever, I think I started to, and as I talked about human design with my clients, I started to go, oh, that's that thing. Oh, now I get it. Now I understand it much clearer. So that's what I mean by things coming online where I get it and I didn't have to put a lot of work into that thing. It just flowed, and at the right time it became clear to me. So that's what I mean by it's online now. I can trust it. I get it. So thank you for that. I hope that was helpful to someone else too.
I think that's a very relatable concept. People, like when you talked about it, I got it instantly. So, but thank you for explaining that because, that would definitely help some people who may not have connected the dots quite so immediately.
Well, thanks.
Thank you. You're welcome. Kai, any last words or anything that you want to share with people watching about your Splenic Authority as a projector?
My Splenic Authority. Right now, there's nothing that pops up. I might can add something to the open will that was just mentioned by Brigitte.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I have to laugh a bit about myself because I'm giving many examples how it didn't work for me. But this is the good experience. But interestingly, although I don't have the defined will, I still was able to develop a strong will, as it seemed, by taking all the expectations from the outside and this condition to needing to prove something or to be successful. And interestingly enough, if I ask friends of mine that know me since 20 years, they all say that I have a strong will. If you ask myself, I don't. I would say no, I don't. I doubt a lot, or like it's yeah, like this outside inside perspective is often very interesting to me, and especially when I look at my chart, and of course also with things that I thought, okay, I got aware of it through the chart, and I couldn't identify with it until I realized, okay, stop, like this is maybe the ego that doesn't want me to be like this, but I am like this, and if I'm honest to myself and follow the strategy and follow my authority and know where my energy is and where not, yeah, it becomes so fluent all of a sudden, so much more with ease, effortless. And yeah, this is my big gain too, because many years I always had the feeling that I need to swim against the current instead of flowing with it.
I wonder if now what they're seeing is you're standing in your authenticity. Like you said, you know yourself better and you can feel that. So I'm wondering if that's your presence that they're feeling.
It's interesting. Through my move from Germany to Portugal 4 years ago, many of my old friends are still in Germany. They do experience me in a new way. And the people that I got to know since I'm living here in Portugal have, of course, a completely different perspective on me than the old friends of mine. And I was a bit afraid in the beginning, especially through my spiritual past, because I come from a completely atheistic environment, scientific believing environment. I was very afraid that I would not be accepted if I speak my truths. But in the moments where I started to, I got very interesting feedbacks, and people were interested what I was saying and started to ask questions. And so, yeah, this was another example for me to stick to my truth and to be authentic. As long as I'm authentic with myself, I'm accepted.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not authentic, I'm not accepted.
Yeah. And I think that is an extremely powerful approach to just standing in you and your power.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for that. Shannon, any last words that you want to share?
Well, I think for your audience, for people that are tuning in or following along and listening about human design, it's such a beautiful system, and there's so many depths and layers to it that sometimes when we first start something, we get overwhelmed. Oh my gosh, I'll never figure out all these things. And if you just start with your authority and you start with your type, I think for projectors, the most beautiful awakening came from the understanding that I am here to be invited. I'm here to be recognized. And when I'm not feeling that sense of bitterness is just the kind of a touch point. Oh, I'm out of my flow. So if we study our authority and we learn how to make good decisions and how to manage our energy, even if you didn't learn anything else about human design other than your type and your authority, maybe your profile, that's kind of helpful too. It's really a game changer. And so I love what you're doing here because it's giving people an opportunity to not just read it in a book, but to see live examples of other people showing up with those particular types and authorities. So thank you so much for doing this. I think it's really cool what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Shannon, for that. And I want to thank everybody on my panel. So Brigitte Knight, Tammy Mack had to step away, but Tammy Mack was on the panel. Shannon Presson and Kai Matthias, thank you so much for being here today and sharing. And this was extremely valuable, and it was lovely to be in your presence. And I love the calming energy of projectors around me. So this was fabulous to have.